Merry Christmas. Welcome to the Relation Shop. It is Christmas week.
Scared me.
We are in here. Y'all know I'm Toya. We got Eric. We got Jason.
Toya's a little bright today. I'm just saying. I know. You got the lip gloss.
Man, we didn't get the
My
memo.
lip gloss be popping.
But y'all are both wearing gray. Look at that. Coordinating.
Boom.
Coordinating. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We got you're like the color sandwich every time between
you are the
our kind of grays and blues.
Exactly.
To the brightness.
A little pop of color.
Yeah, I'm bringing that all the time. So
it's
cool.
good because it distracts people from the fact you're not saying anything. So it's good to have.
Why do we have to start already?
I don't know.
Why are we starting already? I'm just minding my
We're not
own
starting.
business.
We're continuing.
We are
This is
here.
a continuation.
It's the week of Christmas.
I know,
Christmas.
but you know what? That doesn't exempt anybody.
Yeah, no,
There's
it
no
doesn't.
days off, right? I take no days
man.
off.
You know what? But I saw a shirt on Facebook. It said, "Me giving sarcasm is me hugging you." So thank
Absolutely.
you.
Is that? Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you.
Yeah.
Look at that. I was just going to
Feel
say,
that
you
hug.
know, I mean,
How you feel that?
he's not all expert. I mean, you know, I know Hebrew.
That's right.
that's
That's
true.
right.
Yeah.
He doesn't have it. He doesn't have
have
any
that
tabs.
Yeah.
Right.
So
He's got
exactly.
Hebrew on his upper back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
It's covered in hair. You can't read it. It's like an old abandoned.
Did you say it's covered in hair?
Yeah, it's like an old.
I don't have a hairy back.
It's
Did
like
you see hair?
No.
You know, it's like an old. Why are you looking at his naked back? I don't think. Where's this show going?
Back. Why does it have to be that?
He just asked, "Do you see hair?"
But it's on the top. All you gotta do is pull a shirt.
I don't.
You want to see?
I'm just
man.
saying.
You want to see?
I'm just, no, I
man,
don't
here
want
we
to see.
go.
I don't want to see. It's like an old abandoned mansion, you know, where all the shrubs have grown up over it and you
Wow.
can't see anymore, kind of thing.
My goodness.
There is no shrubs growing.
But under there's Hebrew that says, you know, chosen one, or what does it say? I forgot. What does it say?
Yes, I tattooed myself the chosen one.
Chosen one.
Yeah, it
Oh
says
my
family.
gosh.
Says family.
In Hebrew.
The
Yes.
family. Don't go against the family.
There you go.
Oh,
my mafia days.
Oh, it's like a mafia thing.
man.
It's like a Hebrew mafia.
It's a Hebrew mafia.
Yeah.
Sure.
I like it.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Well, since it's the week of Christmas,
Oh, yeah, Christmas, right.
I want to ask, what was your favorite tradition as a kid that you carried on to your own kids?
Ooh, so my answer to the first one doesn't go with the second one.
Oh, okay.
So I'll tell you my favorite tradition as a kid, but then I'll also tell you we didn't really ever get to do that because we moved away from family when our kids were all young. So we would always go back to my in-laws for Christmas every year and do Christmas as a big family. So we didn't develop our own little traditions because we were always with family.
Got it.
Yeah.
The tradition we used to have growing up is we opened one present on Christmas Eve.
Oh, yeah.
And it was always fun because, of course, we're trying to open the best one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we used to get it. And then as we got older, then my parents started playing the game, right? So I'm like looking for the latest Nintendo game.
Yeah.
And they'll go put the Nintendo game in a gigantic box. But then I would pick it up and I'd be like, this box is way too big and way too light. I think it's in here. So then they would get to the point where they'd like tape stuff in there or like add rocks or others, you know. So it became a game of me trying to get one of the gifts I had asked for that I'm assuming they got me, and them trying to disguise it so that I would end up with a, you know, a letdown gift. Instead of opening the Nintendo game I wanted, I opened up the royal blue sweater with the with the white like puffy nature scene with deer on it.
So
that my dad just thought I might like.
So
and I'm
to
like,
crush
what in the world?
Crush your kids' dreams. That was the tradition.
Yeah, well, no, he
I like
legitimately thought I'd really love the sweatshirt. So it was it was like a double whammy because I'd be like, dang, I didn't get the Nintendo
tradition.
game, and then I'd be like, and what is this? Be like, I saw it, I liked it. It's got deer and trees, and I'm like, Dad, I'm not 90.
No, it's a
like,
good
this
tradition.
is great. So
It's a good tradition.
So that was the tradition that,
nice.
that I enjoyed most. The one.
Yeah, I mean, mine, I liked it because my parents finally unlocked the basement and let me out and see lights. So that was
fun. Like once a year,
Yeah, I got to
you
see-
hear the padlock going click, click. and
it
you're
must
like,
be
yeah,
Christmas.
almost Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, but I
man.
have started tradition with my, like when the kids were little, and I still have to do it today. So I make, I do all these things here and stuff. So I make cookies, right?
Oh.
From different countries, and they have to guess. I make 10 batches of cookies, and they gotta figure out
Guess
what
So
country.
this is your
Countries,
thing.
It's my thing. It's what I do.
So that,
Wow.
Did they guess the molasses cookies were from the 1800s?
They didn't.
They
No,
didn't?
You didn't either.
I didn't.
She did.
But I'm wondering if she didn't get that one.
she didn't get that one.
She's like a
I didn't get
century and a
that
half off, but she's like, I was closest.
That's true.
I was
Yeah,
closer
yeah.
than your
Yeah,
guess.
I was
true.
close.
That's
yeah.
true.
But
So,
anyway,
yeah, so
that's fun.
Yeah.
Okay. You didn't say what the new tradition is.
I told you I haven't done any because we were always with family. So we really didn't create any because we were with their family the whole time.
Oh, okay.
So we didn't do any of our like own things.
Gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
that's fun. Okay.
What about you?
Yeah, we did the same. We opened a gift on Christmas Eve, but we didn't get to really pick. My mom would say this one or this one.
But hey,
That's
you know what the biggest tradition was in her house?
Don't say it.
Pepper
Don't
nine.
say it. Don't say
Yeah, she was. Toy was grabbing for the wrong
right.
gift, and she's like, "Do we need Christmas Eve pepper?"
Oh my
All right, you
goodness.
got to explain that because some
Yeah.
people probably don't know
No,
that.
Mom, I'll
So
open the
what
gift you
they're
want me to
referring
that I don't want.
Is when I was young, my mom would say to me and my sister, if you don't go to bed, Santa's going to put pepper in your eyes. So you have to go to sleep
There you
tonight.
go.
And
Traditions.
this has been an ongoing joke.
There
Oh,
you
it's
go.
been an ongoing therapy issue for
Yeah.
you.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So I did have a little bit of a
PTSD,
fear of
pepper
Santa,
traumatic
a little
stress
bit.
disorder.
Pepper
Yeah.
traumatic
Yeah,
stress.
yeah.
That's where it came from.
But it's all good
originally.
now.
Yeah, you know.
Now I know she just needed us to go to bed so that I hope your kids aren't listening, but so that her and my dad could put everything together,
Yeah.
put
Wait.
batteries in the
Wait.
toys.
Wait, what?
Everything.
There's that was last show. Batteries in the toys.
Oh, that's right.
The kids' toys.
Oh, the kids' toys.
Oh, okay. Let me
Oh.
add this before we get. And we're about to get into our topic.
wait.
So, what my parents did. This is another great tradition that I did follow
Just
with
took a hard
Mason.
left turn there. I don't know.
Okay.
She's talking about batteries and toys.
Okay, right.
And then
so
I don't
think
know
about
where
it.
we're going.
I have
am
a
thinking
sister.
about it.
I have
Okay.
a sister, right? So it would be clothes would be wrapped up, and we would unwrap clothes. We would unwrap CDs like music.
Okay.
We would unwrap things like that. But our toys were always out on display, like in a toy store. So a Barbie
Really?
doll house
So
is
when you
already
woke
set.
up,
When we
You
woke
already knew
up,
what it was.
all that
we did
big,
that.
the big stuff.
Okay.
And like a bike would be put together.
Yeah.
You know, all like remember Teddy Ruxpin and those types of dolls.
Yeah.
So the batteries were in them. So everything was ready for us to play
That's
with.
good.
So we would wake up, look down the hallway, and see just like
We kind of did that too. I mean, when I got out of the basement, I had a plate of food waiting on me. So-
Yeah. Same kind of
kinda
thing.
the same.
Okay, so I thought she was running somewhere with batteries and toys, but
yeah.
today that was last week's taboo topic. Today we're going to talk about
let's get into it.
Yeah.
remarriage.
Divorce and remarriage.
And divorce.
That's a fun subject.
Divorce and remarriage.
I know. We went from fun to heavy.
What say you and what say the church?
Exactly.
So since there's only one of us here
Yeah.
who's been divorced and
Yeah.
remarried,
What say
Everything
me?
falls on you.
what's your take on it?
I'm for it.
I'm for it. I'm pro it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but biblically, what was your take on it prior to divorce? Because
Right.
here's the reality: we can have some theological positions
Right.
that experience in life challenges.
Right.
And then we can also have, sometimes we just change our positions based on what we want to do in life. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
just
how
right.
people operate. So,
Yeah.
so did you have a thought on it prior to divorce and then remarriage, or did you have the same thought all the way through, or did you wrestle with any of that stuff?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah.
let's talk about
Saving marriage, that's what we're about. And that's obviously,
Okay.
that's what I'm pro.
Okay.
Pro marriage. But yeah, I would say like growing up and even in adulthood, it's you don't get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get divorced. No reason. Don't get divorced. And then going through what I went through, sometimes things happen. Things happen. But here's the biggest thing taken out of that, as far as the way the church teaches and all that stuff. The teaching I believe in, but there is no room there for leniency or grace or in the churches. I see. Let me explain that a little bit. So what I mean by that is when I went through the divorce, the shame and the guilt that came along with it, I didn't get comforted by the church, was the biggest battle, and still kind of is every now and then. I mean, it's kind of rears its ugly head when, but it's the negative reminder. It's not, the church didn't reach out. And so we preach it, don't do this, don't do this, you got to stay married. But then when it happened, we got nothing for you.
Gotcha.
And so that was the big
So the church for you did not feel your divorce was biblical.
Right.
Which is why they didn't, quote, support you or do whatever.
Yeah, okay. Correct. Yes. So.
Which then if they didn't think divorce was biblical, then they didn't think remarriage would be either.
Correct. Yeah. That would be right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my take on it is I'm for it.
My take on it.
So that's what we're going to talk about.
I think so there'd be some listening that would be like, oh, okay, so I heard him say he wants grace and wiggle room when he wants to do stuff that doesn't line up with Scripture.
Yeah. And that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think people can be.
Oh, people are going to take it. You know how many people came to just a quick story. Actually, somebody came and wanted advice about leaving their spouse, expecting me to go,
yeah, bro, I did it.
Yeah, dude,
I'm so much happier now.
And the great thing was I got to use experiences and actually save that marriage.
Sure.
There's still
hey, man, there's consequences to this. This is not, hey, I was miserable, I got divorced and remarried, I'm super happy.
Yeah, exactly.
There are many familial community.
Isn't I'm tired of that person, I'm moving on. That's the way I think people look at it. It's still look, I'm happy. No question I'm happy.
Sure.
Am I happier than I was? Absolutely. And I think people can look at that and go, it worked for him.
Right.
Sure.
But there's a whole other side.
And that's a reason to do it.
Right.
Happiness.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I didn't choose right. It's not my soulmate. That's a whole different show. What about you, Toya? What would you say? Well, let's do this. What do you believe the Bible says about divorce and remarriage?
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
What did Timothy write?
Nothing. He may have wrote some stuff, but it didn't make the canon.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but one of the letters or two of the letters he received made it in there. They were written to him. Right. Yeah. What about Galatia? What did he write?
I love Galatia.
Oh my goodness.
Galatia, he was awesome. I love a lot of his thoughts.
Wicked party, Galatia.
I love his talk on grace. It was great.
Oh my gosh.
So Toya's answer to what does the Bible say is don't do it.
Don't do it.
Which? Marriage, divorce, or remarriage? Which one don't do?
Oh, all three?
Because listen, do you know what the leading cause of divorce is? Marriage.
What's the leading? Oh.
Yeah, you can't get divorced if you haven't been married. So maybe.
Marriage, you do it if your flesh is weak.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
then you need to go ahead and get married.
Paul says that. Yeah,
Paul
if you're burning, you should probably get married.
If you're unhappy, it's like this is a covenant, right? Now, but I have heard if you are in danger, then you leave, like physical danger, right?
Yeah, that's not divorce or remarriage. That's I've got to remove myself from a date if I'm being physically abused. So get out. That doesn't necessarily mean you divorce them.
But thank you for adding that. So now Eric is saying that doesn't necessarily mean that you divorce. That just means you leave.
Yeah, if you're in a physically abusive, dangerous environment, go. Right. Go get safe. Go stay somewhere else. Yeah, but that doesn't mean you necessarily getting divorced or anything. You just be like, I'm not.
But see, that's what a lot of people think. Like, I need to hurry and just divorce, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just tying it all together with what I'm hearing out in the streets.
Okay, so let's get back to what you're hearing in the street. But before we talk about what you're hearing in the street, since this is our church taboo series, right? What does the church traditionally say?
Don't do it. Unless sexually immoral.
So traditionally conservative evangelical views on divorce and remarriage are it's okay if death.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Spouse dies, you can get remarried. That's not divorce.
Right.
But we're talking divorce and remarriage. Sexual immorality. Right. That's Matthew 19. That's Matthew 5. That's Mark. They all talk about it. And then Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 7, abandonment. So those are usually what people say: sexual immorality, abandonment, or death. Now, that's where people will be like, well, I'm emotionally abandoned. What is abandoned? Because Paul says you're no longer bound. What does bound mean? Does that mean you can get divorced, or you just don't have to stay with them in the situation, all that kind of stuff? So that's traditionally what churches would say. Those are biblical grounds for divorce and remarriage. Think that's good? Bad? Agree? Disagree?
Oh, you asking me?
Yeah.
What does the streets say?
When you are emotionally neglected, right? Okay. Meaning, so now I'm unhappy because my spouse is not paying attention to me.
Yeah, see, they emotionally abandoned me, so now I can try to run
so that's a form of emotional abuse. Whether it's physical abuse, that's obvious, right? Or, affairs, right? What else? That's about it, right? And of course, death. I mean, that's obvious.
Yeah.
That's biblical. But what the streets say.
No, that's what I was going off of.
The streets are, I ain't feeling them.
But that.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
But then they'll say, emotionally, it's just, we're not the same, so
yeah, I got you.
I'm chasing, it's about me.
Yep.
And
Okay, so the Bible, doesn't talk about physical abuse.
Nope.
The Bible doesn't talk about financial abuse or controlling. Bible doesn't talk about addictions.
Right.
So now some people would say the word used for sexual immorality in Matthew 19, some would say it's the word porneia, which was also used in Leviticus. And in the whole list of Leviticus, it was like everything, right? Like incest, bestiality, adultery, it's like they go through the whole list of like your mama's, your daddy's mama, your daddy's wife, your brother's mother, you name, they're like, listen, you're not gonna slide in on us and be like, you didn't mention cousins. Hey, so they tackled everything. So some people would say, pornography, that's sexual immorality too, but it's not really, certainly in the Old Testament, there wasn't pornography.
It wasn't there. Right. It wasn't there.
Pictures. Yeah, we didn't have, it wasn't like the cave version of Pornhub or something where people were like, that's an explicit drawing they drew on there. And I was why were you in the cave so long? I was just checking out the drawing.
Mama's helping me shame again.
Gosh. Oh my goodness.
So far in this series, we have been talking when we biblically approach something, right? So we talked last time about vices, tattoos, piercings, makeup, that kind of stuff. So we've been talking about the context, right? And this is where it gets difficult because if we really are trying. So, for instance, a lot of people Matthew 19 is the longest passage where it says the Pharisees came to test Jesus. It says it in Mark as well. I think it's in Luke too, as well. But Mark doesn't say as much as the whole scenario. So Mark's just basically like, and he said, if you divorce, you cause them to commit adultery, and if you marry a divorced woman, you commit adultery. And so it's like basically, there's no reason given for anything. So basically, if you read Mark by itself, you're going to say divorce causes everybody to have adultery.
Yeah.
And remarriage certainly is adultery as well. And then people will go like Matthew 5, because it says in there too, I tell you, if you divorce a woman, you cause her to commit adultery, and if you marry one. But then the context of Matthew 5 is in all the stuff right after the Beatitudes where he's saying, like, if your eye causes you to stumble, poke it out. If your hand causes you, chop it off.
Right.
So you're not being literal. Right. And then you get to the adultery one and we go, we're going to read the adultery one literal. Yeah. But then we're going to go right back to not literal again. Right. So in all that stuff, Jesus was talking about the heart.
Right.
That's why I said, you've heard it said, if you commit adultery, I'm telling you, if you lust in your heart. You've heard it said, if you murder, I'm telling you, if you're angry to your brother. So he was talking about heart issue stuff. Right. Not a literal. And again, people who are listening are like, he's clearing the room for outs. I'm not at all. I'm just talking about what is it in context. So so let's take the Paul thing, right? 1 Corinthians 7, he talks about abandonment. Right. Paul is specifically talking to people that were married. One of them became a believer. And then the believer asked Paul, should I leave my spouse now
Yeah.
Because they're not a believer. And will that impact my ability? So Paul is addressing specifically the believer who was married and their spouse is not a believer. And that's why Paul says, if they'll stay with you, stay with them.
Yep.
Right.
Because you don't know if you can win them over at some point.
Right.
But then I think it's a stretch if we try to take Paul addressing something specific in the church, kind of like what we talked about last time, which was, can you wear makeup? Women got to be silent.
Right.
But you can't take that and universalize it because it was specific to a situation that was going on. So I think for two Christians who are Christians and got married to turn around and go, it's abandonment, that wouldn't apply to you. What Paul was saying would not apply to you in context.
Right.
So,
I mean, because if you look at some of this stuff, I mean, divorce, at one point, Moses could write you
exactly.
little bit of a certificate and you were good to go.
Let's go context on that.
All right.
Matthew 19.
Yep.
The Pharisees came to test Jesus. So you already know this is Jesus pushing back on their test.
Yeah.
This was not Jesus stood up in the synagogue to give a theology of marriage and divorce and remarriage.
Right.
This is Jesus addressing some people who are trying to trap him, right? So they came and say, hey, Moses said we could do it. What do you say?
Yeah.
To which, Jesus actually never in that passage said you can't get divorced. So if I wanted to take a literal of what he said, then I could almost say, I'm not saying this, so if you're listening or watching, I'm not saying this, but I could almost say divorce is fine.
Yeah.
He never addressed that. Now, he did say it was because of the hardness of your heart.
Right.
When they said, well, how come Moses allowed us to do it? And he basically said, because you got hard hearts, which I would agree with.
Right.
Divorce usually occurs because one or both have a hard heart. Like, I'm just not willing to do the things. I'm not willing to forgive. I'm not willing to put you first. I'm not willing to sacrifice or suffer. Like, I'm not willing to engage anymore. It's a hardness. I would completely agree with that.
Right.
But Jesus never says in there, you can't get divorced.
Right.
He never said that like Moses was wrong. He just said Moses allowed you to do that because you had hard hearts. And then he went back to the intention. Back to the heart, the intention was you get married for life.
Right.
And the two become one, and what God joined together, let man not separate. That's the ideal. That's the goal. But Jesus doesn't actually ever tell anybody they can't get divorced. So I could almost say biblically, you can divorce for whatever you want. You can't remarry.
Oh.
But you can divorce if you want. If it's that bad, or if we want to go real technical, don't divorce. Just separate and stay away from your spouse. And don't get divorced and never remarry, and you would be biblically correct.
Yes.
Right.
But would that be the right heart? Would that be the right thing? And then Jesus, so here's the whole argument in this, and this is where I get frustrated with hard lines, but I understand why people want to draw hard lines, because if there's ambiguity, then people want to do whatever they want to do.
Right.
But Jesus, the reason Jesus brings adultery into the conversation is because the Pharisees were fine with divorce. Half these Pharisees are divorced. But they were anti-adultery. Remember, they wanted to stone the woman in adultery?
Right.
So Jesus is like, oh, okay. How about we play your game?
Exactly.
So I say, if you get divorced and remarried, you're committing adultery. Now what you think you guys want to play?
Right.
Now what you think?
Right.
And there was two different camps, right? You had the two different rabbi schools, Hillel and Shammai. And so Shammai was more conservative. They were the ones that was basically sexual immorality. Hillel was, and so what they're doing is going back to Deuteronomy.
Right.
Moses said you can, if you find uncleanness in your wife and she's lost favor with you can write her a certificate of divorce and kick her out. So they basically, Hillel said, uncleanness is doing anything she don't do. She got a bad attitude. She burnt the toast. She look at you crazy. Any of that would apply.
Right.
Where the other ones, so Jesus was almost first saying, well, let me line up more with Shammai, which is why he said, except for sexual immorality. So he basically tell the whole Hillel group, dude, you guys are foolish.
Yeah.
And then he said, listen, the only reason there's divorce is because we have hard hearts, and that wasn't God's design.
Yeah.
That's the context of that whole passage, not some linear draw the line if this happens. Because again, we talk about all kinds of stuff. If there's addiction issues, if there's abuse, is Jesus really going, you getting the crap beat out of you, but that does not count. Did they cheat?
Right.
Right.
They didn't cheat? Okay. And then if they cheated once, well, they were cheating with their eyes, because you remember Matthew said, if you do it in your eyes, then you do it in your heart. You already did it. So I saw him checking somebody out. That's basically adultery I'm out biblically.
Yeah.
And it's like, listen, it all comes back to the heart.
So why didn't the church teach all that? Why is the hard line of don't?
Same reason, whenever the church is fearful of people's decisions and behaviors, they want to create rules that will control the behaviers so that they can avoid them. It's just like dating.
Which in turn is going to make it worse.
Yeah. I mean, it was clear that love is a greater motivator than the law. I mean, the whole Bible is full of the law never worked. It just exposed stuff. So, but I think that is the fear.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why, because again, if you say some of the things I just said, which is, he didn't really say you couldn't get divorced, or people are like, let me run. So I think
I would want people to do that because now I know their heart. Now I know where they're at instead of just making these rules that, I just got to go by these rules.
Well, yeah. And then instead of leading people towards spiritual maturity and discipling people, we want to create rules that will confine them and keep them in. And so my point in saying all this is everything is context, and everything we've been saying is context. And so those two passages, 1 Corinthians 7 on abandonment, Matthew 19, Jesus on, sexual immorality, I don't think either of those were communicated or written down to create a theology of marriage that was like this cut and dry, black and white. Jesus was being tested, and he addressed it. Yeah. And he brought in something they were against because they were cool with divorce to show them the severity of what they were really doing. And then he took it to a heart issue, which is what he always did, and took it all the way back to what's God's design and intent. Obviously, God's want marriages to stay together.
Right.
Are there some times when people make decisions and leave them, and there's a severity of damage enough that it's hard to maintain them, and you can't keep someone in a marriage who don't want to be in a marriage? And absolutely. Yeah. But that's not God's best.
Right.
But I think we got to be willing to address our heart and, try to do it the way God designed, as opposed to we're just going to have hard hearts and do whatever we want.
All right.
I like that you brought up the whole separation, because you never really hear anybody ever talk about, we're just going to separate. We're not going to divorce. We're just going to separate and live for God and become stronger with God. Like, you never hear anybody mention that. And it's crazy because even Ahmad and I have had these conversations, and he's told me, like, you just need to separate. Like, that's it,
Most people separate is just the step towards divorce because they don't want to be alone.
Right.
And then two, then you got all kinds of weird legal stuff. If I never divorce you, now I'm tied to you legally, and you start taking out a bunch of debt, and I'm on the hook for it and your taxes. And so there are, there are some reasons why it's like, it's kind of tough with all the other stuff tied in now to just stay separated and not deal with them.
Yeah. So look at me. Maybe I'm not a loser. How about that?
I mean, that's probably a different show.
That's my next tattoo.
It's probably a different show. That's really what it says in Croatian on your back. Yeah.
And make sure you just check out episode 99, How to Fight Fair with Your Partner, episode 82, How to Recover from Divorce, and even 80, Separate from Your Spouse to Save Your Marriage.
We talked about all that stuff?
We did that. So Merry Christmas. Like, comment, subscribe. Check us all out on IG. We are out.
Adios.
IG.